The moment the old man stepped into the cafe, it was clear he didn't belong. His clothes were tattered, his shoes worn out, and his face weathered by years of struggle. The sound of the door opening was louder than usual as the customers glanced up from their fancy lattes, eyes narrowing, whispering among themselves. Lisa, a waitress known for her sharp eye for who deserved to be in a place like this, didn't waste a moment. She walked up to him, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her tone dripping with disdain. "Excuse me, sir," she said, voice louder than necessary. "This is a place for people with standards. We don't serve people like you." The old man looked up at her, his eyes kind and tired, but there was no fear in them. He didn't fight back. He simply looked down at the floor, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his wallet. I just wanted a cup of coffee," he muttered. Lisa scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "Coffee? You can't even afford the price of a napkin here," she said, glaring at him. The other customers looked at the scene with a mix of discomfort and amusement. "Please," the old man said quietly. "I just want to sit and rest for a while." Lisa crossed her arms. "I said get out, or I'll call security." The old man stood there for a moment, taking a slow, deep breath. Then, he turned and began walking towards the door, the whispers of the crowd still following him. As the old man reached for the door, a deep voice from the corner of the cafe interrupted the tension. "Is that how you treat your customers?" Lisa froze, her heart skipping a beat. She looked toward the man who had spoken. He was wearing a sharp suit, and his presence seemed to dominate the entire room. There was something about him, a quiet power, that made her feel uneasy. The man stood up slowly, walking towards the old man. "Let him be. He hasn't done anything wrong," he said, his voice calm but firm. Lisa's face flushed with irritation. "Sir, this man—" "I'm sure he's not interested in your opinions," the man interjected, his eyes meeting hers without fear. "Why don't you just bring him the coffee he asked for?" Lisa hesitated, glancing nervously at the other customers who were now all watching her. But she didn't argue. "Fine," she muttered, heading back to the counter to prepare the coffee. The man turned to the old man, who was still standing near the door, his shoulders slumped in resignation. "Please, come back and sit," he said, his tone warm. The old man slowly turned around, his face a mixture of confusion and gratitude. As he sat down, the man placed a hand on his shoulder. "No one deserves to be treated like that. Not here, not anywhere," Lisa returned, still fuming but trying to maintain a professional mask. She placed the coffee on the table in front of the old man, avoiding eye contact. "Here's your coffee," she said flatly. The man in the suit smiled. "Thank you," he said to her, his voice still calm. "Now, if you could bring him a slice of cake as well." Lisa looked at him as if he had asked for the moon. "Cake? He's not here for dessert." "Actually," the man replied, his voice firm, "he's here for what anyone deserves. Respect and kindness. Bring the cake." Lisa's face twisted with frustration, but she didn't argue. She went back to the counter and grabbed the cake, her hands trembling with uncertainty. As she placed the cake on the table, she couldn't help but overhear the conversation between the old man and the man in the suit. "Why are you doing this for me?" the old man asked, his voice shaky. The man smiled. "Because people like you matter, not because of your appearance or your wealth, but because of your heart." The old man nodded, his eyes glistening. "I never expected something like this, not in a place like this." Lisa, standing behind the counter, couldn't shake the growing unease in her chest. Something was off, and she could feel the tension building. Section 4. As the man and the old man continued talking, the atmosphere in the cafe shifted. The usual buzz of the place had quieted. Even the other customers seemed to sense that something deeper was happening. Then, The door to the cafe opened again. This time, a woman entered. She was dressed in the finest clothes, her designer handbag swinging in her arm. She glanced around and immediately spotted the old man. Her face twisted in disgust. "Excuse me," she said loudly, walking toward their table. "What is he doing here?" Her tone was condescending, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the man in the suit. The man in the suit looked up, his expression unreadable. "He's having coffee. Is there a problem?" The woman looked at him, then back at the old man. "He's a beggar. He doesn't belong in here. This place is for us, not people like him." The man in the suit stood up, his gaze steady. "Let me make one thing clear. The way you judge people here, based on how they look or how much they have, is wrong. This man has more dignity than you'll ever understand." The woman's face turned pale and her mouth opened and closed as if searching for words, but none came. The man in the suit turned to the old man. "It's time for everyone to learn a lesson, don't you think?" As the woman stood there, stunned into silence, Lisa couldn't hold back anymore. She walked up to the old man and the man in the suit, her eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I treated you horribly. I should never have judged you." The man in the suit smiled faintly. "It's never too late to change, Lisa." The old man looked up at her, his eyes filled with understanding. "It's not the apology that matters most," he said quietly. "It's the change that follows." The woman, still reeling from the revelation, walked quickly toward the door. She left without a word, the shame evident on her face. As the old man finished his coffee and cake, he turned to the man in the suit. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything." The man smiled. "You don't need to thank me. You've taught me more than anyone here." The old man stood up, his shoulders straightening. "I never thought I'd be treated with such respect in a place like this." The man in the suit shook his head. "Everyone deserves it." As the old man walked out, the cafe returned to its usual rhythm, but something had changed. The people inside now carried with them a newfound respect, not just for those who have money, but for everyone. And the moral was clear. It's not what we have, but how we treat others, that defines us.